5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Vice Chairman Quarles, thank you for joining us today, all of you for joining us today. And in September of 2019, you delivered a speech in which you reiterated the Fed's plans to finalize the stress capital buffer proposal in time for the 2020 Comprehensive Capital Analysis and Review, or CCAR, which means the rule would need to be proposed in the very, very near term. The goal of the stress capital buffer is to provide clarity and harmonization to the overall capital framework for financial institutions that are subject to stress tests. Vice Chairman Quarles, is it still the Federal Reserve Board's intention to have the stress capital buffer finalized in time for the 2020 CCAR?
We are still aiming to have that done in time for this stress testing cycle. You're absolutely right, that time is short.
Given that a reproposal would need at least 60-day comment period, the CCAR instructions are typically issued in January. It seems like it would be very difficult to have that finalized. This proposal was originally released in April of 2018. So what is the reason for the significant delay in moving forward?
Well, the proposal raises a number of complex issues. I think the most significant one is one that I have talked about publicly, which is that we, and which was part of an answer to a previous question, which is that we do want to maintain the quantitative aggregate level of loss absorbency in the system to be the same, notwithstanding some of the incentive changes, some of the, I think, unwarranted assumptions and practices in the current stress testing regime. And calibrating and creating the methodology for keeping that aggregate capital level the same while addressing these incentives has proved to be complex. You're absolutely right that the time is short, but it is not impossible for us to get this done.
When can we expect a reproposal of the stress capital buffer?
We have not decided yet whether we would repropose or proceed in a different administrative procedure fashion.
I've asked you this question before, along with many of my colleagues, but given that the stress capital buffer will preserve the GSIB surcharge, when does the board plan to update the rule as it explicitly said it would in 2015?
So we're always looking at all of the elements of the current regulatory framework to determine when a particular calibration might be out of whack. We regularly look at the calibration of the GSIB surcharge, and we are considering it in the context of the overall body of regulation. In particular, as you know, there is the remainder of the International Basel III agreement, the so-called Basel III endgame, or the banks sometimes call it Basel IV, that remains to be implemented. I think that we should look at all of this as a package. The implementation of that remainder of Basel III could have the effect of significantly raising the aggregate level of capital in the industry. Both I and Chairman Powell have said that we think that aggregate level of loss absorbency should remain is pretty much proper where it is. And so as we consider that implementation, I think we also then need to consider the overal calibration of
you told us, Vice Chairman, and pardon me for interrupting, but it explicitly said that in 2015, that you were going to update the rule. When can we expect this? I mean, given the many post-crisis reforms that have been implemented, is now not the logical time to recalibrate the surcharge to reflect economic growth and reforms?
So I think I think we should not be considering these issues piecemeal. That's one of the reasons why we are where we are, in my view. We have the opportunity and I think the responsibility to look at the remaining implementation of this Basel III endgame as a package, and we would look at that as a package with the calibration of other existing elements of the regulatory framework, which would include the GSIB surcharge. But we should look at that as a package, and that's a project that we're actively underway on.
Well, I truly hope that you move expeditiously. The CCAR is up and January of 2020. You've been talking about this for years. Package, piecemeal. We need these rules updated. I thank you, and I yield back.